Imagine growing up watching your mother choose between paying the electric bill or buying groceries. Imagine filing bankruptcy, losing your house, living in cars. At some point, you've probably asked yourself, how do I break free from the money patterns I inherited? Maybe you've tried to outrun your financial past. You've worked hard, done everything right. But financial trauma doesn't just disappear because you get a paycheck. My guest today, Emily Dinu, was born just months after her sister passed away into a household drowning in millions of dollars of medical debt. By 11, her father had abandoned the family. Her mother, unable to separate her emotions from her financial decisions, as frankly most of us cannot, gave up hope entirely. Emily, however, made a different choice. She graduated high school 3 years early, started working, and at 19 launched her first business as a virtual assistant to C-suite executives. That gateway into wealth changed everything. Today she runs Numinous Capital, a venture capital firm. If you've ever felt like your financial past determines your financial future, this conversation is for you. Emily shares how she learned that debt can feel safer than freedom because it's familiar. She'll explain why nervous system regulation, not accumulation, is the real gift of financial security, and she'll reveal the mindset shift that changes everything. When you hit a snag, try saying, maybe this is a good thing. This conversation is about reframing reality and refusing to let your past determine your future, because here's the truth Emily discovered. Everything you need to transform your financial life, you already have. Listen in.
Welcome to Making Change with Your Money, a podcast that highlights the stories and strategies of women who experienced a big life transition and overcame challenges as they redefined financial success for themselves. Now here's your host, certified financial planner, Laura Rotter.
So welcome, Emily, to the Making Change with Your Money podcast. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Me too, Laura. Thank you for having me.
I'm going to start, as I always do, with the question, what was money like in your family growing up, Emily?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. So just a little bit of background. This isn't something that I share with too many people either. I was born a few months after my sister passed away. So my mom and dad were struggling with millions of dollars in medical debt, depression, and really hopelessness. So I was born in sort of a sense of lack, and almost a vacuum. And I don't think either of them ever really figured out how to navigate that, or were able to break free from it. But for me, I feel like I sort of came out of the womb a bit stubborn, and I wanted better for myself, and I wanted to prove to myself that I could really dig myself out of circumstances. But growing up, my mom, obviously their marriage struggled, and my mom became a single mother, no child support coming in. We filed bankruptcy and eventually lost our house and lived out of cars. And she always had a saying that she was really good at stealing from Peter to pay Paul kind of thing. So just constantly living paycheck to paycheck and never having an abundance or a cushion to really fall back on. And that's really helped me, or it's guided the way that I've dealt with my life and my money. Building wealth has been a passion of mine from a very early age, and having the ability to really live life without that sense of horror of debt and lack behind you is freedom, I believe. Yes.
Wow, Emily, thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
story. And, I've heard a lot of people's money stories, and I'm sure that's a particularly rough one. How old were you? Just to get a sense of.
Yeah. So, like I said, it really all started from birth. And we had moments where we had double incomes coming in, but my mom was a single mother for the majority of my life. But really, it kind of all started to crumble down around our foundation, what little foundation that we had when I was 11 years old. And funny that you asked that very targeted question. Speaking about behavioral, the effects that emotions have on our money. At 11 was really when my dad just quit contact with both of us. He decided to start a new life without either of us. And my mother lost hope completely. And it's really interesting to zoom out and see how her emotions impacted her ability to create income for herself and stability for me and her. So yeah, that made me ultimately a stronger person, I think. Witnessing my mother, I'm not, my mom passed away just months ago, by the way. This is not a criticism of her because I truly believe that we all do the very best that we can. The best that I could do was learn from her missteps, I think, and understanding how to separate my emotions from everything else, creating that distance between what I felt and what I had to do and my potential has been key. It's been a key theme throughout my life.
Wow. I mean, it's hard enough to be 10, 12 years old and all the changes that your body is going through, how important it is to fit in socially
Yeah.
without that kind of baggage, if you will. You sound like you were a pretty determined young woman.
I was, and I have been, and I've had moments where I've hit rock bottom many times. I won't be afraid to say that this has been a journey. Uh, there's no better word for it. Just the winding road of life, especially when you put yourself out there and you do try to reach heights that maybe aren't clear for you, whether or not you can reach new heights for yourself. But constant risk taking and boldness. And two, I think coming from very little and needing very little has helped me. We don't often realize until we lack the things that we think that we need, our comforts, how little we actually need.
Mm-hmm.
And there's certain freedom in that too. But yeah, I would say that I've always been headstrong. Like I said, I think I to a certain degree, I came out of the womb like this. And thank goodness for that too. Thank goodness I wasn't more fragile. And in fact, I think at this stage in my life, I'm practicing learning how to be a little bit more fragile and tender in certain moments because I've had that shell for such a long time. But yeah, thank you for saying that though. I appreciate it. My younger self thanks you.
And interesting, Emily, to hear, how you were and are a risk taker because you could certainly have chosen to go the other path, not having stability. And so really choosing, put your head down, get a good paying job and just stay on that path. And so I am really interested to hear your evolution story. As I told you, this is a podcast listened to by, women who are in or have just come out of a life transition. It sounds like you've certainly had a couple. So please share, what you see as some of your continued determining moments.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I guess tracking back to not having money growing up, I graduated high school 3 years early, and don't get too excited. The grades that I skipped were all in my earlier years, so elementary school.
Okay.
But it did set me ahead of the schedule in a big way. Post high school graduation, obviously I could have taken the college route, but I was living in my mother's car. We didn't have money, so we decided that I would get a job. So I started a corporate apprenticeship. Thank you to an old neighbor that we had for kind of hooking me up with something opportunistic like that and working the numbers and all those things for me. So I worked in corporate for a number of years before college, earned a paycheck, got a taste of what the end game would have been for me if I had taken a more traditional path, because I was being mentored by people that had 4+ year degrees and had a track record and everything like that. And I was like, is this it? Is this all there is? After, yeah. And, everyone walked around like they were zombies. Everyone sort of complained. No one was happy. I was like, ugh, well, I'm already not happy. Is this really what I want for myself? So I started to, and I'll try to condense this because it's a lot. So I'm creative. Another thing to mention is that I come from a family of artists, and entrepreneurism is really sort of the way that I express myself. Because I don't have a creative bone in my body otherwise. I'm an appreciator of the arts, but I'm not artistic at all. So I tried to creatively come up with ways, how do I level myself with the people that I want to be? And the best way that I knew how was to collaborate with people in C-suite. So at 19, I had already started school and everything like that. Bored. It was so vocational. It wasn't challenging. I was mixed up with kids that were my age and sort of immature after I've been in an adult environment for so long. I decided to start my first company at 19. My first company where it was an LLC, because I'd had smaller companies earlier on. This company was well, now when I say it and talk about it, it's nothing incredible. But at the time, I was a first mover in virtual assisting. So I worked directly with C-suites, took off their more administrative tasks and operational tasks. But what that gave me the opportunity to do was get really close to them, constant communication, figure out how their brains worked, and kind of get the lay of the land and taste different industries. And I got really lucky. I've collaborated with some awesome startups and small businesses, but I kind of caught what I call my big break when I got my first family office client. And from there, it just snowballed. It was so much fun. I love being in the wealth space. I love collaborating with people that have that sense of ease of wealth, that freedom, that, I don't have to worry about that anymore kind of thing. I just found it fascinating. I found it fascinating to learn how capital moves throughout the markets. So this meant family offices, commercial real estate, private equity, individual investors, and of course, venture investing. And later on, years after working with him, I was able to create a hedge fund with one of my first clients, who was a CNBC contributor on Fast Money. So I just thought, my whole dreams had come true. Got to travel to New York all the time. It was just fabulous.
How did you initially I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
How did you get introduced to him?
Just through family office connections. That's the thing. I think I did such a good job because I felt like I had to try a lot harder with no real background in what I was doing. That the quality of my work was quite detailed. It's just a function of who I am too. I put a lot into everything that I do. So the referrals without ads is really sort of how I scale, just by providing that value And I didn't ever ask for referrals either. It just sort of happened. So maybe some serendipity there, but also, again, hard work and boldness is where I really have thrived, I think. But anyway, so got that hedge fund running. We created one of the first blockchain ETFs to open up blockchain investing to people that couldn't invest directly into crypto at the time. That was fabulous. Got to do the whole New York Stock Exchange thing and everything like that. And then all yada, yada, yada. Eventually found myself in venture. Again, sort of that convergence of loving entrepreneurs, loving small businesses too. And again, loving the more financial wealth movement side. So I initially started really in investor relations, but also developing investment theses, deal flow, all the real integral components of a venture firm. I learned by doing the hard work for maybe people that are a little bit too busy to really put the time and thought into things. So I just find the operational aspect so critical to good investing. And that's what I'm doing today with Numinous. So I'm really an operator. Go ahead.
So I'm curious, Emily, because we move very quickly from you're a risk taker, your creativity comes out through entrepreneurship, you're a hard worker, you know what it's like to be at the bottom, so you're not afraid of perhaps being without wealth. What skills, I named part of who you are as a person. So what skills did you take from starting a virtual assistant business to helping to start a blockchain ETF to venture? I mean, I can see you're good with people. That's clearly a skill. I'm just wondering what it is. Are you good with numbers? Are you a big picture person? What do you feel like you enjoy doing and you're bringing to all these diverse roles?
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, it's sort of layered because I am good with numbers. I am quite analytical. I love solving, numerical puzzles like that, which informs the way that I invest now because I tend to invest in companies that no one else wants to touch without someone else's courage of that first check-in. Because maybe it's a little scary, a little harder to structure. But really the biggest takeaway from starting from, being raised by an entrepreneur, and then collaborating with those again in the spaces in which I wanted to be, and then also sort of handling all of their relationships, it's pattern recognition at the end of the day, right? Mm-hmm. Being able to identify an incredible founder, an executor, and a juicy market or a potentially juicy market where the company's a first mover. These are all skills that I've acquired over the span of my lifetime, and I think that I dare say that I do it a little bit better than those who followed the traditional pipeline into venture capital, which would be go to business school, get an internship. And then as you're doing your MBA, you can do, venture analyst roles and everything like that. And that's one way to do it. But mine is much more grounded in the realities of working with successful people that have executed over, lifetimes, generational wealth, observing, having relationships with these folks, understanding what they look for, understand what they've done that's worked and what's not worked. And that's, again, sort of, it came out of I just never asked anything more of them other than, yes, compensate me for the work that I do, but I'm not going to ask for more from you. I'm not looking for an opportunity outside of being able to collaborate and just soak up your knowledge and soak up sort of this field that they've all created for themselves. So it's interesting. I think we all tend to think that we have very precise pattern recognition. I would argue that most people think they do, but mine, specific to what I'm doing now, is tactical in that I know what to look for in a human sense, and it's fine-tuned because I kind of had to growing up to protect myself. I had to know who was safe. I had to sort of tread lightly. So I tend to attune to people quite easily, and that helps me now as I speak with founders and other stakeholders, things like that. Yeah.
Thank you. And as a previous investment professional, I mean, now I invest my clients' assets, but it's quite different than what I used to do. I do think pattern recognition does play a huge part in sort of recognizing what's a good investment, what you look for in a management team, what you look for in an industry, etc. So that certainly resonates with me. So I interrupted you as you were starting to talk in more detail about what you're doing now about Newman Capital. Okay. So I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. So Numinous Capital is my venture capital firm, kind of at the beginning stages of what we're doing. I've got some angel investments that I'll warehouse into the fund, but really what I'm doing right now is building the firm that I've always wanted to work for. I've dreamt of working in this industry without having to play the ego game. I've dreamt of working in this industry, in order to direct investments into people that are focused more on substance than they are optics. So, I'm typically first check in a more scientific founder that's maybe a little bit clunky on the personality side, but coachable. So I get really good terms as their first believers, and then they get to blossom into an incredible entrepreneur with resources and mentorship and things like that. And I'm building Numinous specifically to invest in companies that aren't software, as software is very well funded, especially in venture capital. That's sort of what its original purpose was. So non-software companies building between the coasts. So unfortunately, I don't look at California startups. I don't really look at New York City or Boston startups. What I'm looking for are these other opportunistic investments in states that both offer CapEx wise, ability to scale their companies where it's more affordable, where really good jobs are needed. And really creating more opportunity for more people here in the US. I just feel like so much innovation is focused elsewhere, and there's no real reason for that other than we accept that as the status quo. So that's a little bit about our fund. I should also mention that given that I invest in companies that aren't software, that do require a little bit longer time and more money to scale and get to exit, we offer a patient capital timeline as well. So that extends the timeline to exit from 5 to 7 years for venture investment to 7 to 10 years for more patient capital investment. And then another thing I'll add before I hush up is I also partner with economic development firms to identify grants and tax credits and, all these wonderful resources that are supported by the government that we can tap into that a lot of businesses don't know exist. My whole thing is getting that non-dilutive capital first and then start thinking about dilutive capital for our companies, just given the capital intensity of what they do and the timelines that they're dealing with.
You are not the sum of your earnings. You are the sum of your yearnings. If you're ready to use wealth to create more freedom and flexibility, let's align your finances with what matters most. Together, we'll build a plan that balances your scarce resources of energy, time, and money, so you move forward with clarity, confidence, and less stress towards a life of true abundance. Learn more at www.trueabundanceadvisors.com and schedule a short conversation. So when you say capital intensity, you're dealing with companies that create widgets, that have inventory and receivables and are more understandable perhaps than software companies or other technology companies.
Yeah. So capital intensive, that would require, yes. So like, for example, biotech investment, which we really, gosh, I could go on a soapbox about how behind we are as a nation there, developing therapeutics and diagnostics, things that require clinical trials and FDA approval, phase 1, phase 2, et cetera. This costs a lot of money. Another thing that I would love to do one day is kind of adjust policy around how expensive it is for these companies to actually execute and improve health outcomes for real Americans. That's a whole different story. But yeah, so that's one example. Deep tech, so that could be robotics, I guess some AI infrastructure. That's not a huge core piece of my thesis, because I think AI right now is, most AI is really just a wrapper for something else. But things like photonics, things with science behind what they're doing, cost more to develop, but tend to reach broader markets, thus being more valuable at the end of the day, rather than business to business software or business to customer software. So it costs a little bit more, takes a little bit longer on the front side, but on the back side of it, the returns are incredible. The job creation is incredible. The innovation is incredible. It just takes wisdom, resources, time, and focus to get there. And I just feel that we're here in the US, we invest in easy things for the most part. And I think that's why we're so dependent on other countries for critical resources right now. I think we go for fast and easy, overblown valuations. But at the end of the day, you can sort of look around at our infrastructure and our healthcare and see that it's lacking. So that's really what I mean by capital intensive.
Yeah. And certainly, as you pointed out, these can have great returns, and that reflects the fact, certainly in biotech, and that you can also you can lose your money, and so it really needs to be, which I'm sure you're putting together, a portfolio.
Yes,
absolutely. Of investments. I'm curious, since you brought up taking advantage of government money, how the current environment may have made that harder.
Yeah, I think it really depends on how you look at things. And again, this is my upbringing sort of guiding the way that I grapple with this. It really depends on your perspective. You could see it as a challenge and see it as sort of a stopping point for development. Or what I'm really looking for in my entrepreneurs is the ability to overcome and actually create advantage with this current market environment. So create the conditions in which you can be successful. That's what really separates a good entrepreneur from maybe a mediocre one. And that's who I'm after. I'm looking for people that see this as a good thing, see that onshoring is not a bad thing. We have the opportunity now, and this push for developing these critical technologies here in our own country. So why not take advantage of that? Why not ride that wave? I think it can be a good thing, but certainly, with NIH funding being cut off or limited, and grant funding with universities, that has absolutely affected a lot of the startups that I've been coaching and interfacing with. But again, those that are really good entrepreneurs see this as more of an opportunity than anything else. I'm looking for those people. I'm not looking for people that are sitting around and waiting. That's not my type of archetype that I'm looking for, really.
I'd have to believe that, as a generalization, entrepreneurs are glass half full, believe it can be done, believe in their vision
Yes.
kind of people.
Yes.
And if people are listening and saying, I love what she's describing, this is a way of using my capital to help companies I believe in that can make a difference in the world grow, what kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah. So, all right. It really depends on you. It really depends on how much you have to work with. I would say get a good grasp of startup investing before you get all excited about it, because the risks are there, first of all. I'll go to the more how to actually do it after this. The risks exist in early stage startup investing. Absolutely.
Thank you for starting with that, by the way. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. This is not me, shilling venture investing or anything like that. I'm here to help everyone. It's exciting to invest in startups. It's exciting to say that you've invested in XYZ company, but risks exist. Also, what everyone needs to understand is their first check, they'll have to maintain ownership value throughout the entirety of the path to exit. So that means the value in which you're investing in right now does not exist unless you continue investing throughout follow-on rounds. So that's what I'll say first. There are many. Go ahead.
I'm just going to stop you with that. Yeah. What I hear you saying, and I just want to explain it to our readers, is that there will be more capital needed because these are companies that are not yet profitable. They're venture, they're a new idea. And so if you're not in a position to continue to participate in new capital rounds, new additions of capital, of money, your stake could be diluted. So if you owned a certain percentage of the company, though its value may be growing, you could suddenly own a lot less. And so
you can own a lot less, and the time it takes to get to exit, you have to understand you can't get that money back unless you exit. And there are some ways you can sell off to secondaries and everything like that, but that too costs money. Yes. That's not a fluid thing. So that's just a word to the wise. Now, if you want to kind of dip your toes into investing into startups, I think my favorite way to get there, because also another thing we should mention is that venture capital investment falls under accredited investor status. So you have to have a certain net worth or work in a certain industry to actually do this. But there are workarounds. So you can join angel syndicates. That's an easy thing to just Google, and your state probably has that with startup pitches and events, and it's a cool community to be a part of. Or there are online, I think it's called, it's kind of like Kickstarter, but it's for investing. Yeah. But they have a term for it because it's not angel investing. It's a specific term where you're able to just kind of go in there and make small investments into
like crowdfunding, essentially.
Yeah. So thank you. So they call it equity crowdfunding. And so just Google that. I won't try to remember the names of these platforms, but they're really cool to sort of go in, get your toes. Dip your toes into venture investing, start to figure out what makes companies defensible or not, and what could the financial outcome be should you invest. And they do a very good job of breaking those items down. But really, what people can do to really support companies right now, bless you, is offer your support. So if you have expertise in a certain industry or sector, offer your support either tactically through, I don't know, mentorship, or if there is an opportunity for you to sort of open up a pilot program or refer startups to pilot programs within your corporations, that's tremendously valuable. Um, Go to startup events and just be there and enjoy. Um, you know, a lot of startups pitch to empty crowds, and that always breaks my heart and everything like that. So if you see something going on in your community, show up for your local entrepreneurs and offer your support. It doesn't have to be financial. And I can tell you from being in this industry for a while now, it's often the non-financial support that really leads them to where they need to be, through introductions and mentorship, et cetera. Yeah.
I know, Emily, in my area, I live in Westchester County, which is, commuting suburb of New York City, about 30 minutes north of the city. And we have an angels group. It's called Westchester Angels, and meets about once a month. And so it's just interesting to see what's going on in your own community and what could possibly be funded.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, too, gosh, if you love your community and you have a network, oh, gosh, too, that's low hanging fruit for LinkedIn posts, right? I went to this startup competition at Westchester Angels and, tagged the companies there. That helps them too. That offers exposure for the companies building in your community, which, you're part of that community. We should all be there to support them in whatever way that we can.
Oh, I love that. What a great idea. So, as we get towards the end of our conversation, Emily, I do always like to ask, I mean, you've had quite an interesting path from your childhood till today. How has your definition of success and maybe even financial success shifted over this time?
It's a really good question. Yeah, I've personally been through a lot of sort of more unsavory, life transformative things in this past year. And the way that I look at, my relationship to money, um, and what it feels like to be wealthy is much different. I would say even early on, I was still reaching for resources. Now, what I feel financial stability provides is nervous system regulation at the maximum. It's this sense of calm and peace that we all owe ourselves. I also know the familiar feeling, and the familiar appeal of, I'm not going to say appeal. Hopefully, this resonates with someone. The feeling of being in debt and how that can feel more safe than not having it. I can understand that behavior in other people just because I witnessed that in my mom, and everything like that. Debt sort of acts almost like a father that's not there. It's sort of there, sort of on your back constantly, and it may feel secure and it may feel safe and comfortable. But now I realize, maybe having a little less materially, but more assets growing, that's what makes me feel good. Knowing that my money is growing, knowing that I have a fallback plan, knowing that I'm creating opportunity for, my future children and their children and everything like that. That's really how I see money. It's not a function to buy more things, I think, and it's not to catch up with the or keep up with the Joneses or anything like that. So, yeah, that's what I would say. It's just, I think, as you get older and you go through periods of money and not having money, just having, again, that sense of calm is really the experience of having security is an important one and an achievable one for all of us. I really do believe that. I truly do.
Thank you for saying that. I think, I often, when I'm meeting new clients, ask what about money is important. And I'm hearing you say two things, which is security and also freedom.
Mm-hmm.
To be who you are, to pursue what you want to pursue. And as someone who came from the hedge fund world, it's refreshing to hear your answer, which I find very grounding, Emily, because it is so easy, and I was certainly there in keeping up. It's not even keeping up with the Joneses, because you could never keep up with the Titans. But you realize that a lot of the people who are there and making the kind of money they're making, it's because that's the only thing that drives them, at the expense of their families, at the expense of having communities, at the expense of health. So as you get older, you realize, yeah, it's nice to have a big house and a vacation house and fancy vacations and travel on a private jet, and that it's as important, if not more, to have relationships, to have friendships, to have things you're passionate about achieving, and of course, having the freedom and security that money gives you, but not another thing.
Yeah, precisely. Precisely. And I think, you and I sort of speak from personal experience interfacing with high net worth and ultra high net worth clients. Some of those folks do have generational wealth. The ones that have really pursued it and made that their lives, I would not glorify those folks. I truly would not. They have low standards for their lives. If that is all that you look to achieve, that is easy to fake. It's easy to get there, but you can't get there without abandoning yourself and without disrespecting yourself. So really root yourself in what you're endeavoring, what you're hoping for, and what you see in them. They're emotionally bankrupt many times, a lot of times, and not very happy. They're not happy people, even though they seem to have it all. If you meet with them and try to maintain friendships and relationships with them, it's impossible. They're truly unhappy. So I like to hear that mirrored back to me. That's also been my experience. And you really don't need that much. If you think about it, you need a home that you take care of. You can go on vacations. You don't need a jet boat. You don't need a jet. You don't need to sit in first class. First class is a scam. It's not that nice. Ground yourself in knowing that so many useless things and experiences have been marketed to you. You have to root yourself in a foundation that truly matters, and that you will be golden from there.
Yeah, I'm holding my hand over my heart. I so resonate with that. It's such an important thing for our listeners to hear.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
is there anything else you want to make sure you share?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So for your listeners, if you're navigating sort of hardship right now, and that's impacting or any transition that's impacting your finances or your ability to navigate life, just remember my story, please. I think people look at me sometimes and they don't see exactly what I've been through, or how much effort I've put into being where I am today. And you don't know me, but remember, you have it all already. Everything that you need, you already have. Don't be afraid to take risks. Don't be afraid to take chances on yourselves. I understand that we have commitments and responsibilities, but do it for you and do it for something bigger than you too. Navigate life like that. Zoom out. Take pleasure in the patterns that have created your life. And then if you're someone who sort of hits snags and loses hope, try not losing hope sometime. Try just one time, if that happens, saying, well, maybe this is a good thing. Let me make this into a good thing. That would be sort of my closing argument for my story is reframe things, and you're really creating opportunities in your life that wouldn't be there unless you reframe them. And that's sort of how you, as crazy as I'm going to sound, that's how you bend reality, is how you deal with things in life. So that, and then thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to my story. Again, this isn't something that I share freely. So any of you who have listened, I thank you, and I hope that it was valuable.
Thank you, Emily.
Thanks for listening to Making Change with Your Money. Certified financial planner Laura Rotter specializes in helping people just like you organize, clarify, and invest their money in order to support a life of purpose and meaning. Go to www.trueabundanceadvisors.com/workbook for a free resource to help you on your journey. Disclaimer, please remember that the information shared by this podcast does not constitute accounting, legal, tax, investment, or financial advice. It's for information purposes only. You should seek appropriate professional advice for your specific information.